When you think of a nail salon, are you thinking about oxytocin? Are you thinking about your hormones? Are you thinking about gaining weight? I know it seems like a bit of a stretch, but they're all connected. Oxytocin, hormones, especially estrogen, and weight gain, and physical touch, desire even. Welcome to Age Lust, where we talk about lustful aspects of aging. I'm Jessica, a nurse practitioner and certified menopause provider. I've been talking to people about aging, changing bodies, and sex since 2002. My focus for the last 6 years has been on the climacteric journey, otherwise known as the changes that happen with age and hormones. And that's for all bodies. So snuggle up and let's talk about oxytocin. Years ago, I used to present to hospital staff and to a senior group, just different times. But for a while, I would start with pointing out that there are so many nail salons in New York City. Now, I don't think that we have all of these nail salons because we are a city obsessed with hand hygiene, probably the absolute opposite. It's kind of nasty here. That's like, I love New York City, but, it is what it is, right? Know thyself. Anyway, I think that we have all of these nail salons because it is this G-rated way to be touched. And we walk around. Well, not we walk around, but if we are deprived of touch for too long, we go kind of wacky. A person can become ungrounded. They can feel like shit, really. And so nail salons are this very G way to be touched, to be cared for. Now, we just went through and survived a very isolating time where so many of us were not touched. We were not fed with that touch. We were touch deprived. And that does something to our hormones. That does something to our sense of calm, our sense of safety, our sense of being cared for. And that's because of this hormone called oxytocin. Now, oxytocin is more of a neuropeptide or a neurotransmitter than a hormone, but it's both, right? It is multitudes. It's produced in the brain, specifically the hypothalamus, and it is stored in the pituitary gland. And if you really want to get super, super specific, it's the posterior pituitary gland. So the pituitary gland has an anterior and a posterior. It's in the posterior. And it's stored there until it's released. You might have heard of oxytocin because there was all of this talk at one point about a 6-second hug, or some studies talked about a 20-second hug. And that length of hug, that length of touch, released oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It is the feel-good hormone. And it's known to play not only a bonding component in romantic relationships, but also in social bonding, in childbirth, in reproduction, in even sales. The interesting thing is that it's also possibly tied to our body size and our body weight. So, and this is going to play into hormones in a little bit. You'll hopefully you'll see that. So it's been studied for its possible effects on appetite and body weight. Some of the research suggests that oxytocin possibly plays a role in regulating food intake. And by regulating food intake, it affects the body. So the idea is that if you have higher levels of oxytocin, you snack less, you eat less. If you have lower levels of oxytocin, you might weigh more. And they are, of course, using the body mass index, the BMI, which is problematic in itself, right? And we could talk about that another time. Hold that with a grain of salt. I said a grain of thought, a grain of salt. Other studies show that oxytocin and body weight are a little bit more complex, and that in some cases, an increase in oxytocin can promote weight gain. So like the first thing that pops into my mind is, and I'm sure that nobody says this anymore, but they think about like that love chub. So you get into a relationship and then you relax into it and you gain weight. I wonder if that has more to do with you become bonded with somebody and you just feel good. And therefore, any restriction you are putting on yourself, any forced restriction, releases and relaxes, and you just become comfortable. You become comfortable. Anyway, so a little more nuance about this whole idea about oxytocin and how it works in the brain. And then I definitely am going to tie it into hormones in a second, other hormones. But the idea is that oxytocin levels may decrease perceptions of hunger. And also that sense of fullness and satisfaction, right? So when we think about bonding, when we think about closeness, when we think about love, hopefully you associate those pleasures with being satisfied. In the testing that they did, they would use intranasal oxytocin, so literally like spray, like a nasal spray up the nose, and that would reduce calorie intake, and people would stay away from sweet and fattier foods. These are always going to be small sample sizes. There is also some suggestion that oxytocin might affect metabolism and energy balance. Now, the other thing to note is that a lot of these studies are done on animals, not so much on humans. Right before the pandemic, I was working in a men's health clinic, and one of the things that would happen is we would get into a conversation about what their goals were, what they were finding problematic. The primary function was to increase testosterone. When your hormones are out of whack for you, there's a difference between what the labs say and how you're feeling. When you feel like shit and your hormones point to that feeling like shit, and you add a little hormone to the body, sometimes and most times you feel better. And one of the things that happens as we get older, as you know, is that hormones change. Now, what do I mean by hormones? Estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, right? These are all hormones that we all share. Estradiol is the most dominant type of estrogen, and testosterone, right, are really what I'm talking about here. And for all bodies, a lack of these two hormones, or too much of one and not enough of the other, can cause depression, can cause loss of words, can cause a sense of weakness, low libido, low desire, erectile tissues not working well. Everyone has erectile tissue, right? So we were testing those hormones, and we were also finding that when the men were taking testosterone, they still might not have been feeling like they were as connected to their partners. So this particular clinic came up with something called a sex kit. And part of that sex kit was to take intranasal, like a spray, oxytocin, which I think they then changed to sublingual, meaning placed a tablet that they placed under the tongue of oxytocin to promote bonding. Now, interestingly, higher testosterone can lead to lower oxytocin. It's almost as if the body like spikes up the testosterone so that you have sex, you orgasm, you ejaculate, and then the oxytocin lowers so you can like get ready to spread your seed someplace else. Where the opposite happens with people who are estrogen dominant women. They have sex, oxytocin goes up, they feel bonded. Now, okay, there's again nuance to this. Don't get your panties in a twist and start like freaking out because I'm talking in the binary, right? Like, we're just trying to keep it really simple and clean-ish. So I want to move on to estrogen. So estrogen is a group of steroid hormones that are important for the development and maintenance of reproductive functions. And they have other effects on the body as well. Estrogen is known to affect the release of oxytocin as well. So estrogen increases the synthesis and the release of oxytocin in the hypothalamus, right? Well, remember, it's held in the pituitary, right? So it's known to help release it. So an increase in estrogen, and then there's the release of oxytocin. But the other side of the pituitary is responsible for the release of follicle-stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. You might know about those because FSH and LH are they're these checkpoints that tell you when you're ovulating, when you're not ovulating, when you're going to have your period, that sort of thing. But they also help us to know if the brain is sending the signal to the testicles to make more sperm. So all human beings have FSH and LH, right? And all human beings have estradiol, which is the most abundant type of estrogen. Now, remember I had talked about higher testosterone, lower estrogen, possibly less oxytocin. So maybe supplementation would help in bonding. Again, I don't know if it's like hard science or more of a placebo, but placebo is kind of hard science. Placebo meaning like your brain tells you it's going to work, and so you think that it works, and then it does work. Like, that's some real shit, right? Studies on animals and humans suggest that oxytocin receptors in the brain, which oxytocin binds to in order to have an effect, are sensitive to estrogen. That idea is that estrogen enhances the effects of oxytocin by increasing the number of receptors available in the brain. I am not a neuroscientist, okay? I'm just trying to paint a picture where you can see that, well, in a way, brain health is really important to sexual health. Is absolute. Well, that's the thing, right? That's our brain is our brain. Okay, moving on. Oxytocin and estrogen also have effects on physiological processes. So, such as regulating menstrual cycle, bone health, cardiovascular function, and overall mood. So we know with estrogen, and especially if you're interested in menopausal hormonal treatment, or if you're interested in testosterone, hormonal treatment, any kind of hormone treatment, right? Some of the reasons to consider it or to look into it are bone health. That's the primary reason, right? Bone health, especially when we're thinking about how estrogen plays in our bodies and also how testosterone plays in our bodies, right? When we're thinking about heart health and mood, because when we go through these changes as we get older, our mood can turn into absolute shit. But let's talk a little bit about oxytocin and menopause. So one of the things that people really freak out about in menopause is, in this climacteric journey, is weight gain. And there are a couple of reasons that we gain weight in all of the climacteric journeys. So andropause, which is the male menopause, I'm wagging my fingers in quotes. As our hormones go down, our body tries to compensate. And one way that we see that we start to compensate is that we don't have as much muscle mass anymore. We have more fat. More fat helps us to increase our hormones, especially our estrogen. And we know that estradiol levels rapidly decrease. Well, it might feel rapid, that they start to decrease during this transition. As I mentioned, estrogen affects our production and release of oxytocin. So again, where the studies point to is that the declining estrogen levels during menopause may result in lower levels of oxytocin in the body. Then the decline in oxytocin may be, because you're not feeling good, may be associated with the symptoms of menopause, such as hot flashes, sleep disturbance, mood change, and vaginal dryness. Just like the hormones, testosterone, estradiol, right, progesterone, just like hormones start to decrease as we get older, so does that neurotransmitter / hormone oxytocin. And when they've done comparison studies on postmenopausal women to premenopausal women around oxytocin levels, they find that there is a significant difference in those levels, and that postmenopausal women have much lower levels of oxytocin. Funny enough, I wonder, one thing that does happen when we talk about male bodies, and so testosterone starts to drop at the age of 30, and they say around 1% a year. So by the time you're 50, you're 20% lower testosterone than you had when you were 30. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the estradiol level goes down. The estrogen level, the most abundant one, goes down. In fact, for some men, it stays the same or can go up a little bit, which is kind of interesting. And they experience some sadness. And I wonder, and I'd have to look into this and see where their oxytocin level is. So anyway, that's just a side note. If you know, let me know. But back to the symptoms of menopause. So some studies have suggested, because I said that there's possibly a connection between the symptoms and oxytocin, that if you were to take oxytocin, again with the nasal spray, that you will have a reduction in hot flashes and night sweats. And there were some studies that point to this being the case. And I think that all of the studies show that, when oxytocin increases, mood gets better. All right, so let's tie it in together. What we know is that weight gain for a lot of people happens in this perimenopause journey. The weight gain happens around the belly, and that is because when our ovaries are not making the estrogen anymore, our body is craving it. So We start to make it in the liver. The cholesterol goes up. We start to make it in the fat, the belly fat. So our waist gets wider and we start to put on weight. We might start snacking more because the estrogen has gone down. Our oxytocin has gone down. Our desire for sex goes down. Our libido goes down. And it is not uncommon for people to kind of be in the middle of the whole situation, and they might have had a long-term partner and they're thinking like, I could take it or leave it with sex. It's fine, whatever. But at the same time, it's like I used to talk about a 10-day rule. And the 10-day rule is that if you're in a partnership with somebody, that you never go, especially if you're living in the same house, you never go more than 10 days without having sex. And sex can be any way that you have sex, right? I'm not here to define what that means for you or how, like that's a whole nother episode. But you don't go those 10 days because you'll start to notice on that 11th day, they are the most annoying fucking roommate that you have, right? You start to like just, they just are annoying, right? And if you kind of not force yourself, like that's a bad word. It may feel like that, but if you are intentional by having that connection, that body connection, right? It's like if you know that if you put your sneakers on, you'll go to the gym situation, right? So you do what you need to do to make that connection again. And at the end, you'll be laying there thinking, God damn, we need to do this more often. Because that oxytocin has kicked in. You've been flooded with those good feelings. You feel good. You relax into it. Now, if there's pain, if there are reasons that can't keep you from expressing yourself in that sexual way that you used to, absolutely, we can address those. We can figure that out, right? You can talk to your provider. You can talk to your people, whatever you need to do. We can figure that out. But that connection of the 20-second hug, right? And just melting into that it's 20 seconds. It's not even a half a minute, right? Releasing into that can also feed your body what it needs. So like go get your nails done and then do the 20-second hug. I don't know. Now, is that going to be like the thing that is going to stop you from gaining weight if that's your big concern? No, not necessarily, but maybe, I don't know. You know, you can notice how I'm a big one for intuitive eating, right? So you can notice how you feel when you've made that connection, when you've fed that part of your soul in your body, right? When you feel nourished and bonded with whomever or whatever makes you feel that sense of bonding. And see how you feel about food and how you feel about your cravings and your desires, how you feel about your energy. That's one way to increase your oxytocin level. So physical touch. Skin-to-skin contact is one of the best ways to do that. You can think about like a baby when a newborn and you do skin-to-skin to regulate temperature, to create that sense of bonding. Exercise has been shown to increase oxytocin level. But, you know, it's a funny thing with exercise, too, because I don't want you to, like, go out there and be like, I have to do a HIIT training and, like, join a box or whatever, some shit like that, and then all of a sudden you're exhausted. That's not what it's about. It's about moving your body and getting connected. Maybe getting yourself into a little bit of discomfort or a slight sweat, right, where you're breathing a little bit heavy, but not to exhaustion. Social interaction, right, which is something that takes a lot more thought than it used to. Laughing, any kind of nurturing relationships. Massage is really, really helpful. I know that a study came out a few months ago saying that foot massage was very helpful in reducing hot flashes. And I thought, oh, what the hell? You know, of course, who doesn't want to have a nice foot massage? Like, yes, massage my tootsies. Sleep is really important, and adequate sleep increases oxytocin, which can be really hard in midlife. Insomnia is something that can happen in this menopause transition. You can also practice meditation and mindfulness, and that can come in all different types of ways. There's, I really love non-sleep deep relaxation. I love it, love it, love it. It takes the pressure off. You're just lying there or sitting, it doesn't matter, and you're just listening, and you literally, after the 20 minutes, 17 minutes, there's even a 10-minute one, you feel like you took a nap. It's so good. I want to tell you about 4 supplements that help with the increase of oxytocin. But first I got to tell you and remind you, yes, I am a nurse practitioner, but I am not your nurse practitioner. So anything that I mention as far as hormone supplements, please, please, please talk to your healthcare provider about making changes, whether it's physical changes, supplement changes. You must talk to your healthcare provider. This is just information. Also, you need to know that when people have done studies on these supplements, the sample size when it comes to human beings is usually very, very small because it takes a lot of money, time, resources to create studies. But here are 4 supplements that may help. The first one is probiotics. So probiotics help with our gut, our stomach, what we eat. They are lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, and they seem to increase oxytocin levels. Where do you find probiotics? Yes, you can get them in a supplement, but you can also find them in fermented foods such as kimchi, yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut. So you can start right there. The second supplement is omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids are found in fish oils, and they are, or they may be related to the release of oxytocin in the body. So there are also vegan options for that as well. The third supplement is vitamin D. Erykah Badu would call that Dr. Sun. So the sun is where you get vitamin D. So the best way to get your vitamin D is to go out into the sunshine without sunscreen. I hate to say it, for about 15 minutes. Low levels of vitamin D have been linked to decreased oxytocin production. And some studies have found that supplementing with D increases oxytocin in the body. We know that there is a direct relationship from vitamin D and mood, right? So it makes sense that it could be the oxytocin levels. Also, increasing vitamin D helps us to increase testosterone as well. Finally, there's ashwagandha. So ashwagandha is an adaptogenic herb. It's part of the Ayurvedic system, and it helps with stress. And it seems to increase oxytocin production as well. I'm going to actually put a link to examine.com in the description of this episode, so you can go straight there and look into it. But again, These are not, I'm not saying go out and spend a lot of money. I'm simply giving you some ideas. Definitely, like if it brings you pleasure and fills your heart to go out, to graze papaya and get a hot dog with some sauerkraut, do it. I love it. I love that for you. I am all about that. You don't have to go out and buy a supplement or take a pill, a shot, a patch. Right now, I just want you to figure out, do you feel connected? Do you feel connected to somebody or something? Have you noticed a disconnection? And if you have, like, how do we get you back connected? What do you need to do? I just said you don't need to do anything, but you probably do need to do something, right? It could be that you need to exercise, or you need to make a phone call, or you need to make out with somebody, or get that hug, or get your nails done. I don't know. I don't know what your thing is. But all is not lost. This transition can be rough, but it can also be exciting and an opportunity for deep change, deep growth. Anyway, oxytocin, sex drive, weight, hormones. It's all about the brain. It's amazing. Thanks for listening. If this podcast, Age Lust, takes some pressure off or adds some positive pressure, please share it, post about it on social media, and leave a 5-star rating and review. If you have topic ideas or questions, you can leave me a voice message on anchor.fm/agelust or DM me at agelust.co. Any feedback you have, I would love to hear it. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.